Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Evening all, welcome to This Week, and I begin again with a question. What do you get if you combine the dirigiste economics of Ed Miliband and the social prejudices of the Daily Mail? Yes, I know it's difficult, but think about it. Think. Yep, that's right. Theresa May. It's a strange concoction. One part state intervention to put evil capitalists in their place, one part putting yourself at the head of a crusade in the interests of ordinary working families, one part dissing migrants, and just to add some spice to this heady brew, one part gratuitous pop at the liberal metropolitan elite. Who can she have in mind, I wonder? Anyway, I think we can all get behind our new Prime Minister's meritocratic mantra that it doesn't matter what your background or where you come from, it should be unlimited opportunities for all. Unless, of course, you're an immigrant, in which case your employer will be flushed out, probably named and shamed for employing too many of you. But it's not expected you have to wear "I'm an immigrant worker" badge, so far. All music to the ears of UKIP's leader, if it had one, but it hasn't. Because these days, UKIP leaders don't last longer than your average Nigel Farage pub crawl. Though if you operate on the basis that no matter who else claims the crown, the leader is always Nigel Farage, then you'll quickly discover that's a pretty reliable default position. Speaking of crawlers, I'm joined on the sofa tonight by two media tarts who do and say anything to keep in the limelight. Think of them as the Kim Kardashian and Kanye West of late-night political chat. I speak, of course, of hashtag 4% Liz Kendall and Michael hashtag sad man on a train Patillo. Welcome to you both. Michael, your moment of the week.
I'm going to mention the physical altercation amongst the MEPs of UKIP today, not because of the event itself, but just because in this last year, so many bizarre things have happened that my jaw has dropped on an almost daily basis. Some of them have been tragic, like the murder of Joe Cox. Some of them have been bizarre, like Boris Johnson failing to run for the Conservative leadership, Boris Johnson becoming Foreign Secretary, the fall from grace of David Cameron and George Osborne, the emergence of Donald Trump in the United States, Andrea Leadsom being a credible candidate for the Conservative leadership. I mean, really, it's very difficult to be a pundit these days because the most extraordinary things happen. They all come out of left field.
The unexpected tends to happen. Liz, moment?
My moment is America suspending talks with Russia over Syria because of Assad and the Kremlin's intensifying bombing of Aleppo. My real concern is with America focused on the presidential election and Britain and Europe focused on Brexit, we are not providing the strong leadership that we need to protect civilians and hold Russia to account, and that has got to change.
It's not getting any better for the moment, that's for sure. Now, the liberal metropolitan elite, to coin a phrase, likes to sneer that late-night TV is a graveyard for political has-beens. But what do they know, now that one of our number has made it to the very pinnacle of political life? Yes, Diane Abbott, also known as Madam Mao, who ran a very successful Thursday night politics show, you know, at least that's what she told the Nigerian Guardian this summer, has just been made Shadow Home Secretary by our old motorbike mucker Jezza. How cool is that? I understand that tonight she's given a second interview to the Nigerian Guardian, which is now under the impression she's really leader of the opposition. Is this the first and dramatic illustration of Theresa May's enthusiasm for social mobility in action? Is Diane the new poster girl for a brave new world in which there's opportunity for all? Or do we all have to tour East Germany on the back of a bike to get on in life? Here's designer Wayne Hemingway with his take of the week.
I've never voted Conservative and can't imagine ever doing so, but Theresa May has given me a little bit of hope this week.
Come on, baby, yes, this is something.
Is she the first Conservative Prime Minister to fully understand the inequalities haunting Britain? And can she refashion her party to do something about it? But her words are cut from a different cloth from her often repellent party, and that's why it could all unravel. But we need more than a bit of darning. Growing up in the 60s and 70s in a working class family, we never had money, but we had belief. Belief that with a bit of elbow grease, we could go on and do better than the people who brought us up. As teenagers, me and my future wife, we left our hometowns of Blackburn and Burnley for the big city. We emptied our belongings onto Camden Market. The rent was £6. We had no business experience, no assets, no bank of mum and dad. Then we opened shops, and as long as we paid our rent on time, we were never kicked out. But those days are long gone, lost to bank guarantees and inherited wealth and spiralling rents. For the first time, people in their 20s and 30s are worse off than their parents, and a frightening nihilism is emerging across all age groups. Brexit is a reflection of this, but at least May's starting to talk about it. May's proposed redesign of the party is promising. Ever the optimist, I'm loath to believe that this is a cynical move where she just wants to earn loads of money on the speaker circuit. Surely at her age now, she wants to leave a legacy. But the question remains, does she have the practical solutions to match the rhetoric? Let's hope the Conservative Party's new designs are not the Emperor's new clothes and fit the young people and those left behind who so desperately need a helping hand.
And from Rocket Vintage Store in Brick Lane to our own outdated walk-in wardrobe here on This Week. Wayne Hemingway joins us now. Welcome.
Thanks.
Now, the rhetoric's good. You like the rhetoric. What makes you think that she could turn it into anything approaching reality?
Well, I'm not sure she can. But if she's saying that, the thing that surprises me about all of this is you understand when a 40-odd-year-old politician starts to say these things because they're making a position for themselves, they're gathering support. But, you know, I'm 55 years old myself, and I know there's a time in your life where you start to forget about your own self-ambition and you start to think, well, you're supposed to leave this world a better place. And she's 60, and I've got a feeling that she actually, and also from a background, you know, she's from a background that should have proper morals. You know, she's from her father's
Vicar's daughter.
Yeah, and I just think, well, maybe she's seen the light. But then again, you think, you know, why is she in the Tory party in the first place if she's thinking these things? But if her words come to pass, maybe there won't be a Tory party anyway. So it's all kind of really, I find it all a little bit
But
confusing.
you're willing to give her a chance, I think is what you said.
Well, I think we
See
should
if she
give
can
it.
deliver.
Yeah, I mean, but we've got to hold her to account now. We can't let another prime minister. Cameron talked. I mean, the concept of the big society was good. The idea of people getting together and communities and doing things for themselves and being helped a little bit by government to do that. But that was all kicked into touch.
Okay.
We can't afford another prime minister to do that.
But she set a very high bar for herself, a clear improvement in the lives of what she calls ordinary working class people. How do we judge that? How do we judge progress?
Well, I think she was right to say that the big challenge we face as a country and the underlying cause of Brexit is the economy feels like it's only working for a few at the top and not most people. But I don't actually think she is a Prime Minister or this is a government of the centre ground that wants to unite people.
Well, it wouldn't do grammar schools, would it?
Well, I think exactly. I mean, I've heard this week, before her speech, you know, some of the most divisive and right-wing policies I've heard in my lifetime, not just on grammar schools, but on immigration too. And I don't think that you get that kind of one nation unifying politics by what I see actually as quite strong right-wing nationalism.
Well, we had a very unhappy time at our business this week because we employ overseas designers and we're a better company for it, way better. It means that when we export design, we understand export markets. That's one obvious thing about it.
Labour may say that she's not in the centre, but the fact is that she has straddled her tanks, not just on the centre, she's on the centre left. If you read her speech, there's all sorts of things.
Well,
she's again, the rhetoric, policy's another matter. But on the rhetoric, she moved on to... I mean,
No,
a lot of what
I-
she
I-
said used to be said by Ed Miliband.
I would say she's on the right, she's on the centre, and on the left, and that is indeed straddling. I mean, Liz just said something about right-wing nationalists. Many people who voted Labour over the years in the north of England and in Essex and East Anglia and so on are right-wing nationalists, and she's identified that. I'm not at all sure what she'll be able to do about greater equality, but I think she will give a very strong impression that she's listening to people and talking a language that those people talk amongst themselves. Jeremy Corbyn has taken the opportunity to say that he's not going to do anything about immigration if he becomes the Prime Minister of this country. So he's given an amazing opportunity to the Prime Minister, to Theresa May, to talk about these subjects.
What
She could do
we don't
something.
know, what we do, so that's what should she do? We don't really know what she's going to do to improve social mobility, do we?
Well, one thing she could shift the tax burden back the other way, because the tax burden has shifted towards the poor. She could start to. There's still, is it 13 billion of cuts still to go into the public services? She could stop that. She talked about austerity. They've talked about austerity not working. Well, are they now going to end those 13 billion pounds worth of cuts that are decimating public services? She can do it. She could do that at the flick of a finger, couldn't she?
But do you think she is?
Well, she intimated that she would. So I think we've all got to hold her to account now. Something tells me that, the way that things have been going the last couple of years, that it won't happen. No, and then we'll just forget about it. And
But wait, I don't quite know where Wayne has been. Year after year under the Coalition and then under the Conservatives, the threshold at which people begin to pay income tax has been pushed up and up and up. The idea that the poor are now paying more tax than before is just plain wrong. That isn't what's happening.
But there is a much bigger challenge for Theresa May and the government here, which is what she wanted to try and do this week was deal with Brexit first and then go on to how she wants to change the economy and society. And the truth is, you cannot separate the two. If you want the economy to work for everyone, the economy's actually got to work. And I don't think that immigration should be driving your economic policy, which is what we heard this week. That is not going to deliver for the majority of people in this country.
What I think is the most important issue, and Wayne touched on it, actually is housing. And the government has intimated that it's going to put an extra 2 billion into housing. I mean, personally, I would go further and steal Labour clothes. I would simply start building council houses again. Why would I do that? Because you've got to increase the supply of housing, and the most efficient, the quickest way of doing that is to build houses in the public sector. One day they would pass into the private sector because you would sell them to their tenants. But I think that is something she may do. And, Wayne was talking about how people are poorer now than in previous generations. They can't get on the housing ladder. That is the most urgent thing. And it was completely neglected by Osborne and Cameron.
And that's something that can be done. And the other thing that can be done is, you say that the tax burden, we could shift the tax burden. I'm willing to pay more tax. I can and
But the real issue
you should,
here...
you should remember that the top rate of tax at the moment is higher than it was in all the years that Blair and Brown were
The
in
real
government.
issue here is we care about inequalities in income, but it's the inequalities in wealth, in assets. If you really want to change that, you need to look at inheritance tax, at capital gains tax, so that you're not giving more and more assets to those who've already got them, and that you shift to a more long-term system where it's worth people investing in companies rather
You see,
and technology and innovation
I would have
rather
a
than assets
policy
and
of
property.
helping people to get assets rather than a policy of trying to take assets away from people who've got them.
Were you happy with her emphasis on the power of government to do good?
I think it would depend for me what she does with it in the end. But are you saying that it's a foreign principle to Conservatives? No, it is not. I think Margaret Thatcher believes strongly in the power of the state to do good. Harold Macmillan certainly did. So, I don't think there's anything...
it's a shift from the previous. It's a
Yes,
shift from...
I don't think there's anything particularly novel in that. But it depends where she goes. I mean, personally, I would be very unhappy if she goes through with workers on boards. I think that's a pretty daft idea, which certainly hasn't worked well in Germany. But on the other hand, if she's going to start building houses that I just mentioned, I'd be happy.
I'll give two practical ways you can measure it. At the moment, there are 6 million people in this country who earn less than the living wage. So in 3 or 4 years' time, we should maybe test to see whether it's still 6 million or come down. 50% of people who are in poverty in this country are working. They are the working poor. They're not the sort of people that don't go to work on welfare benefits and don't do anything. They're working. They have at least one member of the family is out working. Work was meant to pay, but they're still living in poverty. So let's see, could we cut that 50% down? That would be, I mean, it seemed to me, having been up as the only one here who was in Birmingham, that there was all sorts of rhetoric designed to appeal to Labour voters, to the centre, to Lib Dems, and so on. But we now have to. I'll come. We now have to say, all right, let's take her at her word. But now let's set yardsticks and see tangible yardsticks that can be measured on progress.
I agree with that.
I'm glad to hear it.
A policy that she is inheriting from George Osborne and David Cameron, unless she changes it, is a massive increase in the minimum wage, which is now being retitled the national living wage. The consequence of that is that, you know, people in work should be lifted out of poverty. Another consequence is that there'll be an enormous attraction to new immigration, because, of course, our borders are still open while we're a member of the European Union. And I think she's going to have to wrestle with a tremendous attraction to new immigration and a closing down sale, as immigrants assume that once we leave the European Union, the doors will not be open.
I think one of the biggest things that, you know, the danger is that it was a very populist speech, and she talked about, you know, she didn't say the word fat cats, but she meant people like Philip Green with what
she didn't name check them, but she really talked about them.
But she meant
taking money out of dividends for a company that's pension was going down the Swanee.
But then we hear straight away that they're allowing fracking, which, you know, puts again money into big business and goes against what the public want. And so, you know, you can't.
How do you know what the public want on that? The public want energy. The
Yeah, but
public
there's
want
other
energy.
yeah,
I know there are
but
some
we
people.
could spend money
Right.
on energy that people weren't against. And there were
What's that?
185,000 people
What's that?
signed.
I'm against wind power. You know, it's different people.
Here we go. The one thing we're not going to
There's
do at this
185,000
time of
people
night
signed that.
is
These
fracking
assertions that
for-
Wayne knows what the public
fracking
wants.
for another day. There's been enough gas in this studio for once tonight. Wayne, thanks for coming. It's nice to
Pleasure.
see you.
I've been getting away